I have been getting lots of questions asking about which Nightfarers are best for solo. It happens every day on stream, so I might as well just get a video done. Now don't worry, I still am going to drop my character guides for all the other Nightfarers I've yet to cover, so if you wanted to know an in-depth breakdown on how to use them, those videos will still be coming. But for today, I am going to rank all 8 Nightfarers based on how well they perform in solo play. Now I have completed a solo run with every character multiple times, so all are viable and you can definitely make good builds with them, but some are just going to be easier and more consistent than others. Now starting off at the bottom and to what I consider the hardest Nightfarer to run solo, the Recluse. I think this character more so than anyone else is 100% balanced around team play. Pretty much her entire kit just centers around just having other teammates with you. The major one being her health. She has tied for the worst health out of all the characters, so she is pretty reliant on having your teammates just take the aggro most of the time, especially because that she is very limited to just using spells, and some spells out there can have some really long animations, and you can't really pick and choose which ones you end up going with because everything is very RNG based, and this is especially true for her cocktail. Now, it can be a bit more controlled when you are in solo play to really try and get a specific cocktail mix. Because when you're playing multiplayer and you're playing the Recluse, most of the time with a cocktail mix, you just get what you're given. But if you're by yourself, you do have less opportunities and it is going to be more risky to try and hit an enemy with multiple different elements. And obviously there are no teammates to actually absorb those elements too. And I think the worst part about her cocktail mix when it comes to solo play is that like half of them are just like kind of useless. And honestly, most of them, if not all of them, have really long animations. And for some of these bosses in this game, especially the Night Lord bosses, they don't give you long openings. And combined with the fact that she is very limited as to what types of like weapons you can use, being that she has a really bad strength and dexterity scaling, she's pretty much just limited to using spells. And also her ultimate ability, although it does help her out a bunch, it doesn't really last that long for it to be as useful as some other ultimates in the game, and I think the length of this ultimate is balanced around the fact that your allies can also benefit off it too. Now it's number 7, we have the Revenant. Now for all the reasons that I kind of talked about the Recluse being not that good on solo is somewhat true for the Revenant. Both characters do have the worst health stat in the entire game, so it's only going to take like 1 or 2 hits from most bosses to just end up dying. And just like the Recluse, you are very limited when it does come to weapon options. Because of that really bad strength and dexterity scaling, and only having an S scaling in one stat, which is Faith, you're pretty much limited to just incantations, using your starting weapon, or something like the Coded Sword. Which thankfully your starting weapon is viable enough, and actually can be a pretty decent chance you do come across the Coded Sword off the merchants. But when it comes to the spells and incantations, they can be very inconsistent. At least for the Recluse, she has an S scaling in Intelligence and Faith, so you have more of a chance of coming across a good catalyst with some good spells because you have multiple spell types to play with. Whereas for the Revenant, you just gotta hope that you end up finding a really good seal with some good incantations. You can always guarantee things like Lightning Spear and Black Flame, which can be okay, but they're not gonna be those super hard hitting spells that can melt enemies. Now the way that I'm talking about her, it kind of makes it seem like I'd value her less than the Recluse, but her abilities are actually pretty good on solo play, unlike the Recluses that are kind of meant more for multiplayer. The passive ability will be like more likely to proc because you are by yourself killing all the enemies. No one's there to steal your kills. And most importantly, the character skill. You can summon other allies to actually like draw the attention away from you so you actually can charge up your spells. In most cases, you don't even need to actually have to regenerate the FP, which is going to be like one of the downsides of the Revenant. With bosses just having a lot less health and poise in solo play, you don't honestly need that much more FP. But it does depend on like what types of buffs that you have and what type of incantations you're using. And also her ultimate ability at least can do damage when you have that specific relic, and it can just serve as a nice AoE explosion. So although she does suffer from a lot of the same problems as the Recluse, at least she does have some good utility when it comes to her abilities. At number 6, I want to talk about the Raider. Now, I don't think this character is like particularly worse in solo play compared to multiplayer, like how I was talking about the Recluse or the Revenant. The reason why the Raider gets this low is because that this character inherently needs more attention and more love. Like he needs to get a buff more so than anyone else. Now he's still very viable and he has some things going for him that make him really good. Like his abilities are okay, he has decent strength scaling, he has nice health and stamina. But to start off with, the unique colossal weapon moveset that he gets is just horrendous. And the funny thing is, he's the only Nightfarer that actually gets a unique moveset for multiple weapon types. And it's like the worst one too. It actually extends to the colossal weapons, the great axes, and the great hammers, which these are pretty much the only weapon types that get an S scaling in strength, because all the other weapon types will kind of get a bit more of a quality-based scaling. So for most weapon types in the game, you're literally going to get more damage with someone like the Wilder, sometimes even the Guardian, than you would with the Raider. But this moveset is so incredibly slow that the DPS is just so bad. And if you just had like a Great Hammer or a Great Axe just equipped onto a Wilder, you would just get more DPS and have faster animations, meaning that it's going to be a lot less risky and is more safe to use. So every single time that I end up playing with a Raider, I'm either just using a regular hammer, a Colossal Sword, or if I'm lucky and I find like multiple Great Axes or multiple Great Hammers, I might Power Stance because the Power Stancing combos are the same. And when it does come to his abilities, I kind of wish he just had a different passive, because his passive just boosts his character skill. Like the character skill could just already have Endure or just like a lot more damage negation inherently built into it. And his passive ability could have been something like just having more poise or just having more hyper armor. Or maybe something like when you get a kill for like a short period of time, you just get boosted stance damage. And when it does come to his character skill, it is really good. Any single time you find an attack that's very challenging to dodge, you can pretty much just not get staggered out of it and take basically no damage. Now, it actually does have two separate modes to it. There is like the fully charged version, and there is like the smaller headbutt. But the thing is, to actually get to the fully charged version, it involves you having to take like a certain amount of damage, but this is like so inconsistent. I wish that it's changed it to where you could just have the option to fully charge it or not, and just make his unique moveset just be a bit faster, or maybe just have it just be for the colossal weapons and not the Great Axes and Great Hammers too. I think it'd be in a lot better place. Number 5, we have the Duchess. Now, this might surprise some people because, yeah, she has the tools to like output amazing damage. And I literally did just do a run with her today at level 1 against Libra, and I did it first try. So obviously she can be very good, but kind of similar to some of the other characters I talked about, her kit is kind of more centered around multiplayer use. Starting off with her ultimate ability, this one's like the worst in the entire game, because there's so many ultimates like doing like insane stagger damage and like interrupting bosses and like doing large amounts of damage in general. Just having the ability to just go invisible or having your allies go invisible is pretty niche. Like you can use it to help like revive your allies, but there are other ultimates in the game that can just do that in one hit and also like give you another benefit. So for the most part, you're kind of just using it to like reposition or to like de-aggro an enemy so you can like charge up like one big attack, I guess. There are some relics in the game that can actually help slightly boost this, but it's still not going to be that good. But I think the thing that makes her not that strong in solo play is going to be her stats. Obviously, she is very squishy, and like most squishy characters, not going to do that well on solo play because you need to be able to survive and tank attacks. And also her damaging stats are like super weird, like only getting a B scaling in dexterity, but getting an A scaling in intelligence. So you're kind of like forced to try and find some staves and use some spells, but the character doesn't really have that much FP. So like the way to try and use it is like hope that you get some good spells, spam them all at the start of the fight, and then switch back to like your mid-damaging dexterity weapon. Now you can also rely on status effects too, but the thing is she gets a really bad arcane scaling, so like the status buildup is going to be like worse with this character more so than anyone else. But she does have two like amazing things going for her. 1, her dodge, and 2, her character ability restage. 1, her dodge ability is like kind of just insane. You can just spam it over and over again, and in most cases you're just like not going to be able to get hit. One thing I don't really like about the dodge though is that it does have like shorter animations. So sometimes if you want to like dodge like these attacks just a slight bit earlier, you're pretty much always forced to double tap the dodge button, which is not that big of a deal, but it is like a small downside. But yeah, the character ability restage pretty much just makes all enemies and bosses just take more damage and more status buildup and more stance damage. So even though she does suck with status effect buildup and her damage isn't really that good, this ability more than enough makes up for it. And for some reason, there also is a relic ability that can actually help boost the damage of this. At number 4, we have the Guardian. Now, this is the tankiest character in the game with his S scaling and HP. Gets really high stamina as well, so his chances to survive are a lot higher than all the other characters. In fact, this was the character I used to get my very first solo completion. And one thing I really haven't mentioned much in this video is that when you are playing solo, the game is more likely to give you weapons and buffs that suit more of your character's playstyle, and being that you're playing a tank, you're more likely to find things like damage negation buffs, health boosting buffs, find really good shields for blocking, better guard counters. Like there are so many things that are just super easy to build around and just help you like tank and survive for longer. Like in my opinion, if you actually wanted to memorize a boss's moveset, I think playing the Guardian is one of the best characters to use, purely based on the fact that he can survive for a long time, so you actually have more opportunities to memorize the moveset. Now, unfortunately for the Guardian, he kind of lacks a lot in damage. Similar to like the Duchess, his damaging scalings are just not that good. So you're going to get a lot less damage compared to like most characters in the game. And also you're more likely to find things like halberds, and his halberd moveset really isn't the best either. And when it does come to his abilities, the Whirlwind character skill is actually pretty decent for like stun locking, or if you get grouped up by some trash mobs. In a boss fight, it's kind of useless. The ultimate ability is definitely meant for multiplayer as like a reviving tool, because his damage output is like okay at best. And in terms of his passive, it's very niche and kind of like hard to go into. But if you do end up finding some like walking buffs, like I remember having a game where I end up finding like every single walking buff, and it was like the most insane build and like the easiest solo run I've ever had in my entire life. But arguably even worse than his like damage output is going to be his dodge. His dodge is awful. It is like worse than like fat rolling in Elden Ring. It is that bad. It doesn't dodge very far. It has like a shorter animation. It's clunky, long recovery animations too. Like it just does not feel good. Like they very much incentivize you to actually play around the blocking strategy. So even though he has the potential to be the best one to use, I think those two reasons just like hinder him a lot more. Number 3, we have the Executor. Like these top 3 are pretty much all S tier. Like the Executor is just amazing. He has the highest damage output out of all the characters because for some reason he gets a double S scaling and dexterity and an arcane. So therefore with pretty much every single status effect, you're going to get amazing build up. And for pretty much every type of like dexterity to weapon, you're just going to get amazing damage too. Even like the quality based weapons, you're going to get good damage because he also gets a C scaling in strength, not a D scaling. But yeah, if you ever come across like a dexterity arcane weapon, like a Rivers of Blood, a Reduvia, Eleanor's Pole Blade, or you can just go ahead and make your starting weapon poison infused, slap on things like Chilling Mist, and then you have access to every single status effect while getting really good damage and having that really fast katana moveset. And that's just based on the scalings and his damage output. Like his other stats are actually pretty good too. Has decent health, has decent stamina, and they somehow gave this character the best ultimate in the game too. It can just output the most damage out of all the other characters. It has amazing survivability, and you can pretty much just use it as a panic pop to just get all your health back. Now, unfortunately, his passive is pretty much just like useless. I did talk a lot about it in my character review, so I'm not going to talk about it again here. Same thing as his deflect. But my overall thoughts on it is that it's only really good against those like smaller enemies like Banished Knights or like Lendel Knights, sometimes even Omens. Like other enemies that are pretty hard to stagger otherwise. This deflecting stance can put in work, but yeah, the fact that it doesn't actually get like any type of status effect and that the damage output isn't really that high either. It's kind of just like a small niche little thing. So like, yeah, he can be amazing, can output the highest amount of damage, and he is really fun to use, but the only reason why he doesn't get like into the top 2 is because the other 2 on this list are either just broken or just like super consistent, which that's going to lead me into number 2, the Wilder. I could have easily put this one at number 1 because this guy gets amazing damage with pretty much every weapon. He gets an A scaling in strength, and he gets a B scaling in dexterity. Most weapons in this game kind of fall under a quality scaling, so there is pretty much like no bad weapon type that you can use with the Wilder. He also has really good stamina, and he actually has like the second most health in the game as well. And he's like just as likely to find damage negation buffs and like health boosting buffs, pretty much just as much as someone like the Guardian. But unlike the Guardian, he actually has some really good abilities that help him out a lot in both solo play and in multiplayer. His regular character skill is just like a grapple hook, so it doesn't do anything too amazing, but it can get you from A to B really quickly, and like the more points of interest that you're clearing out, the more runes that you get, and the higher level you can be. And also there is a relic that can buff the weapon too. But his ultimate and his passive is pretty much what like helps propel this guy to get to number 2. His passive is pretty much just like an extra life. Like you can pretty much just avoid death just one time. So you can kind of just say that as like having an additional Wending Grace, but arguably even better than that because it doesn't just happen in boss fights. It happens everywhere and it resets every single time that you interact with a Grace. And when it comes to his ultimate ability, this thing is actually insane. It pretty much stance breaks every single boss and enemy in the game in just one hit. And it can do the most damage in one hit compared to all the other ultimates too. Unless you do talk about some like very specific circumstances with the IRONEYE, which we'll get into that. So yeah, this man basically just has no flaw. If you are starting off the game for the first time and you're just wanting to play solo, or if you're just wanting to play any character, the Wilder will be the one that I choose because it just gives you all the tools that you really need to beat the game. Like nothing too overpowered or too broken, but like you have good damage, good survivability. It's a fun character to use as well. Honestly, the way that I'm talking about him, I kind of actually want to put him at number 1. But it's too late now. Because yeah, number 1, we are going to go with the IRONEYE. I think this is the best character in the entire game, period, for solo play, multiplayer. He is just that good. Now, the immediate downside is that he doesn't really have much health. And as I've been talking about, just being able to survive multiple hits can be a very big positive. But in the case of the IRONEYE, this class is built around using a bow. And when using a bow with the IRONEYE, it is incredibly fast and you get infinite ammo and you can spam it over and over again. So for the most part, you don't even need to engage with an enemy and even risk yourself getting hit. You can just keep hitting them at a distance. And if you're hitting enemies at a distance and killing them at a distance consistently, that means you're spending less time running. That means you can kill enemies faster, and that means you're stacking up on a whole bunch of runes. Like, it feels like most times that I play IRONEYE, I just always end up averaging at a higher level than I would with the other characters. Now, one of the downsides of actually having a bow is that the DPS is not going to be as high as like using a melee weapon. And if you do want to use like a melee weapon and fight enemies at closer range, you're better off just using the EXECUTOR. But the thing is, the IRONEYE gets a skill called marking that like debuffs enemies to make them take more damage. And when you do enough damage, the mark actually breaks and it does like colossal, stupid amounts of damage and doing like insane stance damage too. And if it doesn't stance break, it at least staggers. And you pretty much get this marking debuff back every single 10 seconds. So you can output just as much damage and stance damage as any other character while sitting at a safer distance. And if that wasn't enough, he has a passive ability that gives you more drops and actually increases drop rates to where you're more likely to find higher rarity stuff. So you're more likely to find purple types of weapons. You're more likely to find things like Wending Graces. Like, it feels like 1 in 5 runs that I play the IRONEYE, I just end up finding a Wending Grace. And then he has an ultimate ability that clears out an entire room of enemies and also does amazing damage. And if you actually have an enemy marked and destroy the mark with the ultimate ability, it would end up doing way more damage than the WYLDER's ult. And it actually does it at a safer distance. Like, there are so many bow strats that you can use. The one that I always talk about that constantly involves switching your bows over and over again with the final boss relic. You could play around things like Rain of Arrows to melt those larger bosses, using things like Barrage with a stamina recovery on hits relic. So even though he isn't like the perfectly built character like WYLDER is, pretty much most of this man's kit is just broken. And I think that's the reason why he's just going to get at number 1. Anyway, we are now done with that. As always, let me know what your opinions are down in the comments below. The next videos will probably end up covering the in-depth character guides. And I also am going to post like my solo-based runs as well and all my challenge runs. So if those things do interest you, please do like and subscribe or follow me on Twitch as well. Anyway, catch you guys around. Bye.